Hi, Councilmember Ballard, you're live on Facebook.
Okay, great, thank you. We can call this meeting to order. And if you guys want to introduce yourselves and the neighborhood you represent.
Mark Lakeridge.
Javen Gonzalez, Sunflower.
Bill Washburn with Sherwood Glen.
That's all we have for today. Okay, does anyone want to, we can make a motion to approve minutes, right?
And we can go ahead and come back if some, you have board members that walk in a little bit, we can come back to that.
Okay, great. Would Wichita Fire like to do an update?
Sure. You can come up there, stand here.
Sure.
Okay,
If
my
you
name's
just stand a
Jason.
little bit close to the mic, so
Okay.
you can have thanks.
My name is Jason Mundell. I'm the captain over at Station 3, 32nd Broadway. District 6 had 2 fires last month, one on North Nevada and one on Old Lawrence Road. Had about $100,000 worth of damage between the two. Both of the fires are still under investigation. They're undetermined. Been busy with dealing with the heat, sending lots of extra crews to calls to deal with that, heat exposures and things like that. Just want to remind everybody to check on your neighbors during this high heat time and watch out for each other and drink plenty of fluid. And that's about the only updates we have.
Okay, does anybody have questions?
And things go with the 4th of July.
I have not seen the latest updates or stats on that because it just ended. So usually next month is when they start putting out stats for firework incidents and things like that. This one.
I think we're gonna be on schedule for the, I guess I'll call it temporary station at 13th and West.
The last time I'd heard anything about that, we were. I haven't heard anything in the last couple of weeks about it, but it was still being discussed, moving along, and I think there was an issue with property, but I haven't heard any details. I think they got it worked out, so.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Okay,
Okay, thanks.
We have put restriction on the fire department, no burnouts in the parking lot.
Okay, Wichita Police Department?
Good evening. My name is Brian Mock. I'm a sergeant in the Central Bureau. I'm not one of your regular community policing officers, but I try and make all of the DAB board meetings on kind of a rotation. So that's, I'm here tonight on behalf of Captain Nicholson, who's our bureau commander, to kind of give you an overview of the Central Bureau, what that means, what we do, and then take any questions you guys might have of that. So, former Chief Ramsey formed the Central Bureau with the intent of it continuing to grow, but it is very small right now and houses mainly traffic and some social workers that work with DCF and ComCare. So that is our basic function right now, with the goal of becoming a fully functional bureau as the department continues to grow. The advantage to the department is we can continue to push that Central Bureau out and move some of the, some of these really large bureaus further out so that we're kind of able to grow as the city does. But right now, it's primarily traffic and then the social workers. So the traffic unit is split up into 2 basic functions. One would be enforcement, so the motorcycles and the radar cars that you see out would be our enforcement function. And then you have the guys that report to me, and there's 2 different functions they do. One is the detectives that will investigate all fatal and critical accidents and get those appropriately filed for charging. And then I have 3 records clerks that will do like DUI administration, accident reporting, handling to the state, and those kinds of things. So we have we're authorized, I believe, 17 officers for the centralized traffic function, but we are not fully filled because we have to make sure that some of the patrol functions are filled before we are. So very small at this point, but those officers are citywide and will go to where we have complaints of traffic problems. Currently in Wichita, we've had 23 fatal collisions that the Wichita Police Department has handled. That puts us to be about on pace from where we were last year. Unfortunately, last year was a high year for us. It was 46 fatal collisions last year. That is the ones that the Wichita Police Department handles. So if you ask KDOT or somebody for numbers, they're going to give you KHP's, Sedgwick County's, and ours. So that number you get from KDOT's always going to be a little bit higher. I just count the ones that we do. Okay, so by and large, our fatals are caused by one of three things. One would be intoxicated or impaired drivers, because that doesn't always include alcohol. Second would be speed. Third would be like fail to yield right-of-way violations. So someone turns in front of somebody or pulls out in front of somebody or something like that. And those aren't necessarily in order, but they're just kind of the top three of where we're at. So what we ask our enforcement guys to do is kind of go out and look for the violations that we know are causing serious collisions. And those would be up there. Okay, so high speed is one. And I always get the question of what does high speed mean? Kind of depends on where you are, right? If you're 10 over in a school zone, that's much different than being 10 over on Kellogg, right? But if you're at 100 miles on Kellogg, 100 miles an hour, I think, we can all agree that that's high speed up there too, right? Or would be anywhere. So it kind of depends on where you're at. So for, in your neighborhoods, if you see somebody going 40 in a neighborhood that's marked as, well, all neighborhoods are marked as 30. So if you're going 40 in a neighborhood, that's a lot faster and a lot more dangerous than if you're doing, 10 over somewhere else. So that's kind of a number that moves around a little bit. But the other thing to think about is NHTSA, the National Highway Transportation Safety Administration, has said for years that our impaired drivers, it used to be you expected impaired drivers at night when drinking was a big deal. But drug impairment has become a bigger thing over the last several years, and those occur all the time. So all the traffic officers will be looking for impaired drivers as well. Daytime guys will be focusing more on drugs or even prescription medication kind of impaired driving. Night guys are obviously a little more focused towards alcohol. So the social workers that we have working, I can't tell you a whole lot about them because I don't work over on that side of the office that much. But I can tell you that we're hiring, I think 6 more to begin with, and they will be focused on working with DCF and ComCare to kind of be the liaison between the department and those organizations, and also to maybe help people that are in those organizations to liaison with the department as well. So if you're a ComCare client, they would be your contact within the department to work on those issues. So that's my spiel. I'll probably be back at some point, but I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Got 3 of them.
Okay.
Relative to the social workers, are these team members also associated with either, well, HOT is one of my questions, but the other one is for conditions or situations where an officer gets called out and there's some obvious mental disorders. Do they go on site with the officer to assist with that?
So I can't tell you exactly how the program will work. I think there's some hopes that will be the case in some of them at least. The mental health system, as you know, is overburdened. And if we can help without placing people into the overburdened mental health system, I think that's part of the goal. Now, if we have a crisis situation going on, will they go out right then with the officer? I mean, I don't know, they're social workers, so if we're having a dangerous situation, they certainly aren't going to go in first. They're going to go in after that. So.
Second, fatal collisions. You mentioned the number and said we're running a little bit behind kind of where we were last year. How does that compare with comparable cities? Like, I don't know what to compare it to Tulsa, do you know?
I actually just talked to Tulsa not too long ago on a study that I was doing, and they are higher. But the thing to remember with Tulsa is their metro population is so much larger that kind of has an effect both on crime rate and everything else that happens there, right? So Tulsa's metro population is closer to 1 million, where we're, 500,000. But like some of their suburbs are 100,000 people cities, and we just don't have that around us. So that's kind of a hard comparison to make sometimes. If you look, like Omaha's kind of the same way, right? Like their city size looks about the same, but their suburbs are bigger, right? So we run probably a little, average, I would think. But for us, we're a little bit up over the last couple years, and so that's for us. If we're just looking at our numbers, that's concerning, right? Like we want to, if we're comparing to ourselves, we want to be lower, not higher than where we were before.
Third question, and you're doing well so far. Is the core team involved with any of the second chance scheduling and opportunities to ensure that people get a fair shake, but at the same token, we don't let somebody off the hook that shouldn't?
So Second Chance is actually run by Patrol West, so we're not involved with that. Patrol West mostly is, okay? I don't know if you are aware, but we've made some changes recently, and recently means within the last, several years, where like if you were driving on a suspended license, that was a mandatory arrest, right? Like we've changed that to a citable offense, and so some of that has lessened. But the second chance part is administered out of Patrol West, and there's a representative here from that might be able to give you a little more insight on what they're doing to reach out with that.
Okay.
So, okay?
Thank you.
Mhm. Yes, sir.
I've got a couple questions. You mentioned that you were a little understaffed because they were prioritizing the patrol function over the enforcement function. How understaffed are you? And is there a correlation between that and being understaffed and the rise in the cases you're seeing?
So to answer the understaffed, we are only 2 officers down right now, but we are a very small team. No matter what, even if we were fully staffed, we'd still be a small team. Okay, we are traffic focused, but that doesn't mean we're the only ones doing traffic, right? Like the expectations is still out on the CP officers and the patrol officers and those. It's not like because we have a traffic section, they can't enforce traffic or shouldn't enforce traffic. So in a broad general sense, if you don't have traffic enforcement, especially of the dangerous violations, there is a correlation to the number of going up, okay? So one of the things that did happen nationwide, not just Wichita, but one of the things when we were in the height of the pandemic and we were being asked to limit contact with people, that has a chilling effect on all kinds of self-initiated activity, right? But what helped us out then too is, especially during the lockdown, you guys know the streets were abandoned at least there for a little while, right? So I have a tendency to kind of say in the post-COVID world, a lot has changed, and that includes police work and self-initiated activity and enforcement along with it. So we're kind of trying to find a way a little bit there too, but that's a very long answer to say yes, if we're not enforcing traffic, there is a correlation to the numbers going up.
Okay. My second is maybe an enforcement opportunity. I had 2 different neighbors share with me that they had seen some racing on North Shore, just north of 21st Street.
Mhm.
I know there's a lot on Zoo Boulevard, but they've seen it's kind of moving to that neighborhood a little bit, so I don't know if that's for you or for one of the other officers. But.
So it's kind of a combination of both, right? So racing is something, in my almost 25 years on the department, we've dealt with it, in different pockets of the city over and over.
Right.
Realistically, you're probably just chasing them from one spot to the next, right? Unfortunately. I don't know how a police department stops racing totally. There are some new laws that have been passed that says, we can impound their car for a certain amount of days, and that will have an effect eventually, but you got to start enforcing that, and some people have got to see that those laws are in effect in order for that to happen. So if you're seeing something like that from a traffic perspective, what we ask you to do is contact your community policing officer, tell them about it, and then what we ask our community policing officers to do is to validate that there is a problem. And then we can help assign resources to that. But very rarely will traffic, because we're a small unit, take that over completely, because we just don't have the ability to do that. So again, that stretches out to everybody.
Is that with Patrol West? I should share that with them.
North Shore, is that west or north?
I believe that is west side.
Yeah,
Thank you.
so, okay. Yes,
For
sir.
you or Gary, jump in here. How much do you guys coordinate when it comes to working with data, with enforcement, when you're looking at, different areas in town, whether it's construction or, just different trends?
Who you?
Well, I can tell you, Gary Jansen, city engineer. So our traffic group, traffic engineer Mike Armour and his staff work closely with Wichita Police Department, and the complaints can either start in police or with us. They usually come through a lot of venues, through council members and everybody else. I can't speak for what police department does for enforcement in construction zones. But they do get information from us at any point in time that the speed limit's been lowered for a temporary period of time, so they're aware of that, but I can't speak on that. So otherwise, though, we hear a lot of concerns, even some that were talked about here about speeding in other areas. Those will end up coming to us a lot of times too. We get a lot of data from police crashes in particular areas, which we utilize, and I was having a discussion with the city manager's office just about this recently, and KDOT, we utilize for different funding programs to be able to try to secure funding, especially through the Metropolitan Planning Organization, high crash areas, high traffic areas, issues, places where we've got issues. So in that regards, we work closely with police. We end up looking then, if it's, there's only so many of these guys and they can't be everywhere all the time to enforce. What we do with that then is try to look for ways for traffic calming. And we've started to look for more ways, and everybody wants to put in speed bumps. Speed bumps are never a good idea. In fact, the city council included an ordinance now that does not allow speed bumps. So we started looking at other ways to help with traffic calming. I don't want to get too far away from your question, but we've got a really good relationship with police between Wichita PD and our traffic engineering group that we try to stay in close contact.
Thank you.
And then from the police perspective, we do have crime analysts. They're largely dedicated to crime, but if we're having traffic issues, we can get some data from them as well. We don't collect probably as much as we could, but we do at least know where crashes are happening and causes of them from that data. So. Okay.
Thank you.
All right, thanks.
Hello, council member, members of the board. I'm Officer West, representing Patrol West. It's community policing. It's my first time at DAB 6, so I have the area pretty far south, but that's okay. So I just have a few things I want to talk about. Is a National Night Out's coming up here in August 9th. I just want to make sure everybody's aware of that. That's something we're looking forward to. Another thing that we're looking forward to is there's an event called Tip a Cop. And what it is where Patrol West is going to be going out to the Dunkin' Donuts there on West Street, and that's going to be on August the 19th. And we'll be there from, I think 7 in the morning to 11 in the morning. And what that is we're trying to raise money for the Special Olympics, so we can help them out. We did pretty good last year. A couple of the officers were wearing some shorts, and we were telling people that we couldn't afford long pants anymore. So just kind of humorous, a lot of fun, making, communicating with the public. And we're, like I said, we're able to raise some pretty decent money for Special Olympics. So it's the Dunkin' Donuts there on West Street, just north of Kellogg, on the west side of the street.
Great, thank you.
Absolutely. And are you guys doing that too? Is it citywide? No? Okay. Okay. Maybe you haven't been told yet. The next thing is we were recently contacted last week by Safe Streets. And one of the things they're doing is they have a bunch of nasal Narcan that was donated or acquired by them somehow. I don't know if it's donated to them or what. But one of the things they want to do is partner with the police department, since myself and another officer out west have all the hotels along West Kellogg. And we have seen some fentanyl overdoses out there where once or twice the nasal Narcan has been used in those and everything. So Safe Streets, like I said, is wanting to partner with us. And we are going to go out this week with them, and they're going to see if they can distribute some of these nasal Narcans out to some of the hotels and everything. So they have those available if needed. So, yeah, we're meeting with them on the 3rd, so on Wednesday. So, we were talking about traffic earlier. One of the things, and you were asking about stats, I believe. One of the things, and I think all bureaus have this, but if we get like a neighborhood complaint about speeders up and down the street and everything, like Sergeant Mock said, residential streets is undocumented 30 miles an hour. but you're standing in your front yard and 30 miles an hour looks pretty darn fast at times because I've witnessed it myself. But one of the things we can do is we have this thing called a stealth stop. And if we get a complaint, we can put it out in that area and everything. And what it does is it collects information for us and everything. And what that tells us is how many cars went by, what was the average speed, and all of that stuff. If somebody says, every day you have 50 cars doing 60 miles an hour down a residential road, and you can put that up in place for so many days, and the average speed's actually 30, then we're not gonna put a whole lot of resources to that, obviously. But if we are seeing something, that's concerning, obviously, we're gonna work that area and everything, so.
Anybody have any questions?
Any questions? Thank you guys for having me.
Thank you so much.
All right, you're up.
Last but not least. I'm Officer Casey Widener, for those that don't know me. Community policing officer for 49 Beat, which is the area we're in right now. Don't have a whole lot. I was going to bring up neighborhood night out, but he beat me to it. So next Tuesday, if you guys have one of those going on, or find one, drive around, find one, join us. We're going to be adjusting our schedule so that we can be here all night to party and hang out with you guys. The other thing I wanted to bring up, super excited about, for those of you that have kids that go to Ortiz or know somebody who has kids that go to Ortiz Elementary right there at 33rd in Arkansas. I was just notified by the head of security at BOE that I don't know if anybody's seen it. I just saw it today. They have made an adjustment. I got call after call after call about cars stalled down Arkansas waiting to pick up their kids in the parking lot from Ortiz. I got a hold of, we were just talking about Mike, got a hold of him, got a hold of whoever I could think of, and they have come up with the solution, and it is in place right now. I have a map of what it looks like. I don't know why I printed this off like you guys can see it. But the essential idea is you're gonna come off of Arkansas, you're gonna go west on 33rd. It's gonna loop around. Mascot is a circle, come back out, and then now they have built a second entrance off of 33rd into the parking lot. So hopefully those cars will be off of Arkansas, off into essentially the neighborhood, and will come in that second entrance to hopefully alleviate all of that traffic coming off Arkansas and being backed up. Super excited. So this will start the first day of school, and I will be out there in the afternoon to help BOE security kind of get everybody familiar with where they're supposed to go and how they're supposed to do things since it's new. But that's all I have. So any questions for me?
Thank you.
All righty.
Library update.
Good evening, Sarah McNeil with the Wichita Public Library. Got a few updates for you. After a 3-year hiatus due to COVID, we're hosting Local Author Day, and that's going to be on Saturday, August 20th. It differs a little bit this year. We're going to have a writer's panel in the morning, so there's 3 authors that are going to be presenting their experience and take Q&As from 10:30 to 11:30. And then in the afternoon, there's going to be an author expo. So the entire conference room is going to be opened up, and there's going to be tables, and people can sell their books, which is kind of unusual for our events. Usually they're open and free to the public, but because we're supporting local authors, we want them to get their stuff out there. They can sign their work, and it's a great way to network. If you know a local author or who would like to participate, reach out to us. You can visit our website, wichitalibrary.org/local-author-day to register, or just give us a call and we can do that for you. We received funding to renew our internet bundles. And our internet bundles, I've talked about them before, but it's basically a Chromebook and a hotspot together, and it circulates for a month. And this gives access to people to get connected online at their home. We were approved of a $111,000 received funding, federal funding through the FCC's Emergency Connectivity Fund program. So that was a grant that we got. We were waiting. We had to shut it down for a month until we found out we got funding. We got it. So we have it for another year. And that funding will take us through June 30th of next year. So if you know anyone who needs to get connected and wants to borrow the internet at home, come see us. All you need is a full access library card for that. Our fall gardening series will begin tomorrow, and it will run through September 1st. So we are going to do a hybrid program this year where we do in-person programs at the downtown library on Tuesday evenings from 6 to 7:30, and then the same program will repeat itself on Thursdays on Zoom. And so if you can't attend in person, you can register on Zoom. This is a program that's co-sponsored with K-State Research and Extension Sedgwick County. So they're all the master gardeners that are in town. They get to present some of their interesting findings and then also get the community in touch with different gardening techniques here in Kansas. So we've got pollinator gardens, gardening with birds, lazy gardeners, lawn and soil maintenance, and so on. If you want to register for one of those online classes, give us a call at 361-261-8500. And one final thing to mention that's kind of new for this branch in particular is Next Step Alliance is where they will continue to offer GED classes, but they're going to start offering ESL classes at the end of this month. They had an open enrollment last week and then actually an in-person enrollment here on Friday. But if you know anybody who's interested in those classes, I'm sure you could give them a call at their main campus, 316-677-1150. The GED classes will be offered Monday through Thursday mornings, 9 to noon, and the ESL classes will be offered Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday evenings from 5 to 8 p.m. The classes are free, but they do ask that there's a $50 fee for supplies. And like I mentioned, I think all the in-person enrollment's done, but give them a call if you know somebody who's interested, because it's a great service to have for this community. So, yeah. I'll take any questions if anyone has any. Yeah.
Just something to consider for those of us that are not bilingual.
Mhm.
On the other direction, an SSL class. Spanish is a second language.
Yeah, what's really great about partnering with Empower is they can reach out to people who are accredited to teach ESL. We would have to find staffing that could do that or secure volunteers that could commit to that. We do offer Mango languages, which the novice person can download and kind of teach themselves, like Duolingo or Rosetta Stone. And that's one of the databases you get with your library card. So I've taken some Farsi, I've done some, Spanish for librarians. It's nice, but we don't necessarily have the staff capacity to do that right now.
I didn't know about the online option.
Yeah, it's a great Mango Languages. You can get it on our research tools tab, and you just log in with your library card, and you can also put it on your mobile device. So on the go, it's nice. But yeah, we'll start with English first, and then we'll see where we can go. No, for sure.
The local author day, is that going to be here?
No, it's going to be at the downtown library, 711 West 2nd Street. And when you go into their entrance, just to the right is where their huge conference center is at, and the whole space is going to be opened up, and it'll be in there.
Sarah, do you know about how many of those internet bundles are available?
So the last time that I checked, we had originally 250. Some of them had gotten damaged or lost, and so the last I checked, we had about 150 circulating, or at least that could circulate. So I know they're still under warranty, so we're able to get them out and get them repaired at no cost to the customer if they get returned. So right now, that's what we're trying to do, is just get them all on that track. We do have, I believe, 50 separate hotspots that aren't tethered to the internet bundle that also circulate for a shorter time. And so that at least helps, because our NRC partners, they were doing that for a while, and then I think it just kind of fizzled out because they weren't getting returned. And so the library actually, because you have to have a library card, it ensures that fiscal responsibility. And so they often do get returned.
Thank you.
Yeah, you bet. All right, thanks.
Public Works and Utility update.
Gary Jansen, city engineer. So we, on a quarterly basis, provide an update to all the district advisory boards. So we got staff at 4 different tabs tonight on capital projects generally within the district. And then we talk about a few bigger things that are citywide. Are you gonna pull that list up there if you don't mind? And I'll walk through this. This is the same list of projects that I review with Councilmember Ballard on a more regular basis. And so I'll go through this with you. I'm happy to answer any other questions that might come up. Generally, it's got projects under construction, projects under design, and then other issues relevant to the district. So we're making changes to McLean Boulevard from Central to 13th Street. Over the last couple of years, we heard a lot about high speeds, about concerns with pedestrians getting across McLean. The intersection of McLean and 9th Street never warranted a traffic signal itself, but we're gonna do a couple of things. Right now, there's pavement rehabilitation going on, so we're gonna change it to 3 lanes. If all the new pavement markings go down, it'll be 3 lanes. Generally, we've seen 3 lanes will provide some traffic calming and slow traffic down. It's easier for pedestrians to cross 3 lanes than it is 4. At about 10th Street, we're gonna put in a median there that will provide some traffic calming and a refuge for anybody crossing the street. We're also gonna put in a signalized crossing there, a pedestrian signalized crossing. Pavement work will be done in August. The pedestrian signal should be activated here later this year. Our annual pavement preservation program across the city is winding down for 2022 within District 6. I think you've seen the work that's going on 21st Street, much needed work between Waco and Arkansas. The pavement rehabilitation is going now, and we'll put a new surface on that in August. Our goal, and it will happen, is to get that done before we close down the Amnon Bridge, which I'll talk about in just a little bit. Pavement rehabilitation work started today in the Delano area on Douglas from Seneca to McLean. Douglas is currently closed to through traffic in a 3-block section there. We're gonna do it over the next 4 days. We'll be done by Thursday, open up Friday for the weekend. We're gonna come back on August 22nd. This is based on the wind surge schedule. The next time that they're out of town and do the same thing on the rest of that piece. So that's gonna generally rehabilitate the pavement. One of the things we are gonna do with this project is to provide new crosswalk markings for each of the intersections. Those intersections have got brick crosswalks that had never been striped. Over time, you kind of start to lose the contrast of that brick. And we've heard a lot from the businesses and the people that use the area that it's really hard to kind of see where the intersection's at. So this will do a lot to really help with pedestrian improvements. Still got some crack sealing to do on arterial streets that'll happen yet this year. Preservative seal is happening now on arterial streets. One of the things that we're trying to do is to preserve the streets that we've got in good condition. It's a very cost-effective, high return on our investment to go in and seal the streets that we just put a new surface on last year, so that's what's happening there. The improvements to Mosley from 13th to 17th Street should be winding down by Cargill. That was very much needed too, with heavy truck traffic in the area. And we're currently working on some improvements to Zoo Boulevard and 17th Street both. Again, the most of our preservation work across the community is winding down. We'll be starting to talk about the 2023 program with City Council soon. Douglas Street, we made some improvements to the traffic signals between McLean Boulevard and Hydraulic. If you happen to drive Douglas on a regular basis, I noticed some fairly decent improvements the last time I was down there. So what we did was upgrade to a lot of the smart components of the traffic signal system, including installing pedestrian push buttons were not there before. All the signals in downtown used to run on a fixed time because there's no way for pedestrians to activate when they want to go. So lights would turn, whether there was traffic on a side street or pedestrians were there, we would have a set time, so it would give time to the side street. That can create some problems over time with safety and people wanting to run red lights. This becomes more predictable and more reactive to the traffic and the pedestrians that are there. We've got our consultant who did that working on a report so that I can provide to the city council and the city manager showing the improved efficiency, which we think will be as much as 30 to 40% from a timing perspective. So that's something we're continuing to work on across the community over time. It's fairly costly for a lot of the new equipment and the new infrastructure. And that's something we're looking at on the federal infrastructure side to see if there might be additional funding available. Projects that we've got under design include 29th Street North from I-135 to the west, basically to the railroad tracks. We are looking at making improvements, particularly at the 29th and Ohio and 29th and St. Francis intersections. A lot of added truck traffic in that area recently and a lot more coming with Ericsell, with what Dole has done. A lot of the local businesses, Conco Construction, Johnson Controls is just growing about as fast as a company can grow. So it's really adding to the need to accommodate more trucks, and so those improvements will be coming in 2023. We're working on design for the first phase of improvements on 21st Street North from I-135 to Moden. The first phase will go from I-135 to the bridge where the Chisholm Creek comes through. That construction will start yet this year. That's going to help with the traffic that's coming, with what you see, all the improvements with the spec warehouses and the new truck center that's coming there soon. There's going to be a lot of increase in traffic, and so we're hoping that timing is right to get those improvements done. And then we'll continue a second phase through the Mosley intersection. That'll most likely happen next year. Hamden Bridge, I want to spend a few seconds on. So we've been through a lot on the Hamden Bridge. We actually are scheduled to open bids for construction this Friday. Everything looks to be tracking to keep that on Friday, keeping our fingers crossed. We've been current market, there's a lot of volatility with pricing. Inflation has impacted things across the board for construction. Our most recent estimate and the funding that the city council has approved, we feel confident about getting a good bid on Friday. And then what happens after that is we've got a few things that need to happen up front once we get everything resolved with the contract. We expect the contractor to start work by September 1st. That's probably not when the bridge will close. One of the things we worked out with Wichita Transit, with this bridge going to be closed for the duration of construction, Wichita Transit is adding 6 locations for a new route to detour around the bridge. We heard from a lot of people who walk across the bridge on a daily basis, especially up to 21st and Hamden, whether it's to restaurants, whether it's to grocery stores. Wichita Transit is going to provide free service for the duration of the project, which is estimated at 14 months. It'll go to the west, up and around, to get people to and from that neighborhood, and even up from the north back around the bridge. So that's going to be a really good thing. We've got to do some work to get the bus pads in, bus signage up, things like that. We actually have, City of Wichita has a pipe that's hanging on that bridge. It's our existing water treatment plant. It sends the sludge up to where we process that at 29th and West Street. We've got to relocate that line first, so we'll have to get that done too. Right now, we would estimate the bridge closing around October 1st. There will be a lot of notice through the media, through social media, about everything place we can imagine. We're going to make sure there's plenty of advance notice, working through Anna, working through the council member to make sure everybody knows. I think we did a pretty good job leading up till now to make sure everybody knows that this is coming, but we want to make sure we follow up with that and be very specific of what's going to happen next. One of the things we're going to do too, normally when we have a road closed, we've got signs up that says road closed ahead and you follow a detour. We took an extra step, and the signage for this project is going to talk specifically about the businesses at 21st and Hamden, because they're really going to feel the brunt of this more than anybody. And we've got specific signage that says, when you come to 13th and McLean, that the businesses at 21st and Hamden are still open. Here's how you get to them. And we're going to detour 13th to West Street, up West Street, and around 21st Street. We can't always make people follow a detour, but at least it's there. At least it lets them know the businesses are still there. So the last comment I'll make about that is there will be traffic that will find their way through the neighborhoods, especially on the east side of Hamden. Is a little bit more direct route. On the west side, you can only get back to West Street. There's no crossing of the river. This bridge is in a really unique position, really challenging position compared to other bridges that we've closed in the past. When you've got both rivers coming through there, really cuts off access to the neighborhoods. We have we found out what the traffic counts were now. so that we knew what the traffic patterns were, what the traffic numbers were through these neighborhoods. Basically at all the access points where they could get through, back and through. Once the bridge is closed, we're gonna watch traffic and see what's happening. I have no doubt we'll hear from people who live in the neighborhoods, and that's good. We need to hear that. We also need to know what the actual numbers are, what the actual patterns are, and what people are doing. We may have to work with the Wichita Police Department for some enforcement initially. And then if we start to see issues, we'll do what we can to help slow traffic down, provide additional signage potentially. It's gonna be hard to stop, but hopefully we won't see too many problems with that. That's one thing we're gonna keep a really close eye on. Anyway, we're getting ready to move forward. Again, opening bids Friday. Keep our fingers crossed that we get a good bid and we'll be ready to go. Shut the bridge down 1st of October. We're estimating 14 months for construction. There's some really cool enhancements to this bridge, some art aesthetic enhancements that are gonna make this look really cool. So we're excited to get this done. The bike path on the south side of the river during construction, this is one of the values of closing the road, we will keep a connection kind of up top, down to 15th and across to where you don't just run out of nothing there. So we'll reconnect people at the top and back down to the river so that can still be used. We hear from a lot of people on that too. The question was asked about the temporary fire station. Had some conversations today. We've actually come to a point where we're working on a lease agreement for 2 different properties because it all happened at the same time. We were working on one, actually in the Dillon's parking lot. It's not something we would have expected, but they were willing to work with us, and one of the nice things about that, it's already paved, and utilities are pretty good access. Wichita Fire Department has secured these temporary facilities, so they've got a building for their equipment to go in, they've got a living quarters. That's already been bid. Once we have a site selected, those people will come in and set that up. We're gonna hook it up to water, sewer, and power. We started working on another property near 13th and Sheridan because we thought Dillon's wasn't gonna work out. We just got the lease agreement back from Dillon, so now we're trying to figure out which one is the most viable option to move forward with. It would seem that Dillon's is, but there's still some logistical issues with that, so we're trying to, either way, I'm confident we're gonna have something up and running before we close the bridge down. So, this is something unique. I've never seen it done. I think it's really cool. This is one of the biggest things we heard through the public engagement process since the end of last year, was response time, emergency response time, public safety. So I'm really excited we're getting this done, and I would give a lot of credit and thank you to Councilmember Ballard for pushing us on that. So if there's any questions on that, I'm happy to come back to it, but if not, I'm gonna move on. So we're working on a design for improvements to Hoover from 21st to 29th. That will start next year. That will go to a 3-lane roadway with a multi-use path on the east side, sidewalk on the west. We're going to rebuild the 21st Street intersection at the same time. As a side note to that, I'm just going to mention real quick that there's some things going on with the new water treatment plant right now around the intersection of 21st and Hoover over the next 3 months. That's going to close traffic down at different times. Bill Perkins is going to talk about that in detail. But just so you know, that'll kind of shift around over the next 3 months. And I think good notification went out to the area. Last thing I'm going to mention is KDOT projects in the area, and these are all in the northeast corridor. Everybody's aware of the North Junction, what's going on with the North Junction. If you have opportunity to drive through there, it's pretty cool, at least it is for an engineer like me, to see that northbound to westbound flyover coming together. You can see that really taking shape. That's only the first phase of that project. The rest of that project, which includes a lot more of the interchange, that project's going to bid in October. It's almost $100 million worth of work. So I tell everybody this just so you know, traffic flow has been really smooth through this portion of the project. But what's coming next, they'll still keep generally 2 lanes in each direction, but what's coming next is going to be a lot more invasive than what you've seen so far. So I say that because some people have called and they assume that this is winding down. There's still work to be done through 2025 on that project, so there's a lot more coming. It's going to be great when it's done. I'm going to skip down to East Kellogg real quick and I'll come back to K96. So Kellogg from K96 to the 2.5 miles east of there, KDOT is moving forward. They awarded that project $225 million in construction funding in the Eisenhower Transportation Plan to move forward with expansion of the 6-lane freeway. It would provide grade separation interchanges at 143rd and 159th. Look very similar to what we did through Webb and Greenwich. It's really needed because there's some real issues at 143rd Street with congestion and safety. And so it's really good for this project to happen. KDOT has a desire to also finish this by 2025. That's going to take an extraordinary effort on how this project gets done. Typically, on these bigger projects like the North Junction, you design the project, you bid it, and you build it, right? Design, bid, build. This is all going to happen at the same time by way of progressive design build. This is the only transportation project in the country that's going to be built like this year. It's been done before. Our water treatment plant is being done by progressive design build. It's a way for everybody to move forward together at the same time. The owner, the designer, and the contractor. It'll work well. It's going to be a challenge to get done by the end of 2025, but that means construction will be underway next summer. But there's going to be a lot happening. So there's a lot of bridge work that happens at K96. There's some improvements made there. So that'll be coming soon. So they want to work on the bookends here of K96 and get the North Junction and get East Kellogg all done by the end of 2025, because as soon as that is done, K96 is going to be expanded to a 6-lane freeway from 135 all the way around to 21st Street. Anybody who is on K96 during morning or afternoon peak hours knows that that thing is full of traffic, and basically you just kind of sit and wait. It's become a high crash area too, which is not ideal. It's going to be, it's really needed. There's no doubt that it's needed. So that'll expand to 6 lanes. It'll rebuild the interchanges at Woodlawn, Rock, and Webb Road, especially the part underneath, and make that a lot cleaner and a lot smoother for traffic flow. Over time with development, it's gotten to where there's a lot of queuing and a lot of congestion. So that's over $500 million in transportation work that's going to happen from North Junction around to East Kellogg all the way through 2028. So just when you thought it was almost done. Anyway, that is all I got. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Got about 4 of them.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so, first one I've got is relative to the Amblin Street Bridge. First comment on that is just clerical. I think the reference to DAB 1 should be DAB 6. More importantly, last time we met, we talked about frontage road, 21st Street. Have you guys given any consideration to what to do about that? Left-hand turns with the increased traffic of the detour? You tracking?
Oh, at Westdale.
Yeah.
Not yet,
Okay.
but it's, we haven't forgot about it, and I should have mentioned that.
What was the question?
The at 21st West Street and Windmill,
Westdale.
Westdale. I
West
get
Ridge?
Windmill and Westdale confused. Right by Quincy's, right?
West Ridge?
No,
Was it-
Windmill.
It runs
Westdale,
parallel
Westdale.
to 235.
Westdale.
Oh, yeah, the long, okay, got it.
Yeah. So right now, if you're coming out of there, if you're coming out of there and kind of looking to the east and want to hang a left and go down 21st Street, and it's a little bit of a dangerous proposition, and we're going to be bringing even more traffic there. So Bill had asked the question about could we do something during construction, and we're looking at that, and I appreciate you asking me that again, so we'll look at that.
Cool. Second one, the current construction project that's going on with the McLean Boulevard changes,
Yes.
some kind of signing or something needs to be done as you transition as anyone transitions from Central Avenue onto McLean. There's a merge point there between the people turning north off of Central and the people coming off of Central getting onto McLean. That is a mess. It's full of pock marks. There's a sharp ridge between what's been taken off and the existing pavement. And pretty dangerous trying to
Okay.
make that transition.
I appreciate that. And so at the south end of the project.
Yeah. And then the third thing I've got is, at the last neighborhood association meeting, I took a lot of flack. I didn't think to ask for names and specific addresses of concern. But the pavement microsurfacing project that took place in Sherwood Lane, from, it would have been from Walmer over to Woodrow, I think, and from 37th North. Probably had a half a dozen neighbors there complaining about the quality of the work. So I don't know if you guys do after-the-fact reviews on how providers perform.
We do,
Okay.
and I'll make a note that we take a look at that.
And my fourth question is a lot more fun. The North Junction, if I understood what you shared with us, the gold portion of projects is supposed to be done in 2025?
Yes.
Okay. So what about the other two colors?
So the green project is already done. It's what went west of the interchange. It was the first portion that went from the interchange to Meridian.
Yeah.
What's going on now is what's considered the accelerated gold. What's going to bid is the rest of the gold project. The purple is the one that's left, and we don't have a timeline for that.
Okay.
And it's a little bit similar to Callaghan 235. It's in multiple phases. You know, what happened there at Callaghan 235, we think took care of the majority of the problems for quite some time. Same at the North Junction. That purple phase is looking long-term. I think when we get done with this gold phase, we'll find it's gonna operate well for a considerable amount of time. But it was just looking ahead to make sure everything was in the right spots and nothing has to come out in the future. That's why that purple phase was evaluated.
Refresh me, the purple phase was doing what?
Well, it goes farther north. In fact, it extends some improvements all the way up to 53rd Street, and then it goes a little bit farther east on the interchange too.
Okay.
I have a question for you about the pedestrian traffic on the area. You said the transit is going to do a free loop around.
Yes.
How is that going to be advertised to pedestrians in the area?
Well, we did some already through the public outreach that we did with pretty much everybody in the area invited to some of the public meetings where they had. So a lot of people there have seen it. But what we're going to kick off soon, making sure we have a good bid on Friday. So we know who the contractor is and we can start planning, scheduling with them. I've been working closely with Anna and our communications team. We're going to start to really ramp up the public outreach to the community in general, focused on that area, and it'll include that information.
Is that going to be mostly digital, or is there going to be signage there? Or?
Well, there won't be. There will be signs up for the stops. There won't be any signs up particularly for transit. Most of it's going to be digital. You know what we did, and Anna's got information for the neighborhood associations and also for Nextdoor, I think is where we provide a lot of information. We heard back from a lot of people that's where they like to receive their information. So we're going to blast it through every single resource that we've got to get that information.
I'm just concerned with it being mostly digital. You know, a lot of people who rely on walking, they don't necessarily have a phone or have computer access.
That's why we added the information we talked about. We heard from a lot of people who did have the ability to see emails from Nextdoor. Most people said they at least had that part. We'll put information out on City Channel 7. Not everybody has access to that.
Is there any type of possibility where there could be signage at the bus stops or at the construction point itself?
Well, if you have signage at the bus stops, that means they've already gotten there. I mean, the idea is you'd be able to let people know. There will be signs at the bus stops.
But it's free?
Yeah, and it'll include information that says it's free. Yeah. I feel confident with the information, the way that and I appreciate you asking that. We got a lot of people to the public meeting we had in late March to discuss this project, and from the feedback I got, I think we did a really good job with outreach for that area, and again, we'll do a media release, just a general media release that has all this information in it, so it'll get out by way of the Wichita Eagle through all the news stations. Other than sending a direct letter to every single property owner, I think we've got everything covered.
And then will that be available in both English and Spanish?
Some of the information we've been providing we did for the invites, but I would assume we could probably do that too. Yeah.
So, one more thing on that pedestrian traffic. I know you do traffic studies ahead of time to determine how many vehicles are going to be affected. Do we have any ballpark idea how many pedestrians are affected there? I mean, just so the transit knows what to expect on day one?
No, but they'll if they were here, they would tell you that they'll accommodate it regardless. they're gonna have a continuous route. The challenge we've done pedestrian counts before. It depends on what day it is. We generally have staff go out there during the day, but we've also done after hours too, and you can really see a variance. You know, I drive across that a lot, I live up north, and I see quite a bit of pedestrian traffic on that bridge.
Yeah.
We talked to Transit about that, and as far as the bus and stuff they're gonna provide, they'll be able to accommodate it regardless. I don't know the numbers, it's kind of a challenge for us to figure that out, but I think what they're gonna do will serve it well.
One more, you mentioned the modular fire station, or the temporary fire
Yeah.
station, I guess. Is that a modular thing that we could use in another place when this project's done?
It is not, it's not for the city to own.
Okay.
It's just for the period of time for this temporary fire station, then they take it back, if that makes sense. That's how it was bid. And the companies that do this, it's put out for competitive bid, they'll just take it and use it somewhere else. Good question, though.
Is this such an unusual thing that would we have an opportunity to use it again? Is there an opportunity for that, or it's just not something we encounter that often, that we would probably ever?
I've never seen us in a situation like this where we felt like we needed it. My guess is, and I don't speak for the fire department, if they had something like that, maybe there could be other opportunities to use it, but I don't know that I recall seeing one as specific as this.
It's kind of a cool idea.
Generally, when we've closed bridges in the past, if you look at the Municipal Bridge, and then going down the river, Douglas, Maple, Harry, Lincoln, Pawnee, it's pretty easy to get around the bridge back to the other side. There's just a lot more crossings. This is just a really a tough situation here with the rivers, and that's why it really called for that.
Gary, back on the transit, you may not know this, are they gonna go straight west? If they're, because they come south on Amity, are they gonna go west on the 21st? Because in that March meeting, we had talked about the business owner, actually the property owner of New Leaf had proposed using New Leaf parking lot as turnaround, because there is that final stop before you go over the bridge, sits right in front of there.
As of right now, they're planning on using Amity itself to turn around. And they think they can make that work. I mean, effectively, they're gonna use the same stops that are on Amity right now.
The last one is south of 21st.
Right, and they're gonna plan on using that and using Amity to turn around. Yeah. Yeah. That's the plan, and I think they've probably looked at some of this routing already, at least at what that'll happen, but I know in talking to my staff, Sean, he said once a bridge is closed, if that doesn't work too well, then we may have to consider what was offered.
Well, I don't know, Mike provided that there's new stops along 21st and then along within the neighborhood as well.
Right,
So, yeah.
right. I have one last quick comment that doesn't have to do with projects, but I wanted to mention. And I'm just saying this because it helps my staff out. AT&T is placing fiber optic cable all over the community. They're gonna be doing this for the next 3 to 5 years. It's to bring higher speed internet to those who want it. Nobody has to take it, but they have a right to do that work within the public right-of-way and easements by way of franchise agreement. My office issues permits to AT&T to be in those areas, but our purpose is to make sure that they put it back the way they found it, right? I can't control what AT&T does. But so they really got going here over the last few months. Again, this is gonna be another 3 to 5 years. And my staff was inundated, City Hall staff was inundated. I don't know if you got any calls, but others did, just nonstop, because, and I get it, a lot of people don't quite understand how utilities work, and they think that's the city out there doing the work, and it's not. We're here to help, and they do have to restore the yard, they do have to do things, but we were getting a lot of calls about, we don't want you out here, we don't want your service, are you gonna force me to, those are the types of things AT&T needs to answer. So we did a media release that can be found on City of Wichita social media, and it's got contact information for AT&T, it's got an email and a phone number, and I apologize, I should have brought that with me. But if you happen, again, we're here to help, but we can only help so much. And so I just letting everybody know that it's a lot easier to contact AT&T with most questions. We'll definitely do what we can, but it's become a really big deal, and they've got a long ways to go. So I just wanted to mention that real quick.
I can vouch, it's going on in my neighborhood right now, and they have a flyer they put on your door that has contact for the contractor, as well as contact for AT&T. So every resident in the neighborhood gets a flyer on the door with AT&T contact information.
And I appreciate you mentioning that, Philip. And I'll tell you what,
There's a lot of holes in my backyard right now that they don't.
I appreciate you mentioning that. So here's what our experience has been over the years, and I'm one of those people that almost never goes in my front door. So we hear from people that didn't even know it was on their front door, or what I've heard for most of my career, when people see stuff like that, just throw it away and don't even look at it. So Philip, I'm glad to hear that you looked at it. They're doing the right thing. They're doing the right thing, but I don't think most, and it's fine. I get it. I'm not sure everybody looks at it.
And so far, where they're done in my neighborhood looks pretty good, like you didn't even know they were there. So I'm hoping that's the same for my
Yeah.
neighborhood.
I didn't tell you all that to dump anything on AT&T. I just kind of want to let you be aware of what's happening. We're here to help. Most of the questions are better served to go to them.
Anybody else?
Thank you.
Gary. All right. Moving on to the public agenda. Looks like there are no scheduled items. On to the off-agenda items. Looks like you have one item?
Thank you, Councilwoman Maggie and Maggie Ballard and the board. What I want to read to you is the sheriff's report, and this is involving Chris Dugan, the fire marshal of the Wichita Fire Department. He's the highest ranking police officer basically on the fire department in first quoted. And this is a Greenwood County sheriff that wrote this report. So I'm going to try to read this to you here as quick as I can. On April 18th of 2022, at approximately 16:57 hours, the Greenwood County Sheriff's Office received a 911 call from, and it's blacking out the names of this stuff in the report, requesting fire crews to assist with an out-of-control fire at 67 M Road, Greenwood County, Kansas. The caller was identified using his phone number, blacked out again, is also registered owner of approximately 80 acres of land, 67 M Road, Greenwood County, Kansas. At approximately 17:05 hours, Severy Fire and Piedmont Fire was dispatched to the location on M Road. At 7:14 hours, the first two trucks arrived on scene and began extinguishing fire. At approximately 17:30 to 17:45, 3 additional units arrived on scene to assist. At approximately 18:58 hours, fire units completed the call by extinguishing the fire. While on scene, fire crews attempted to gather information for the investigation for their call. Some of the individuals on scene questioned refused to give their names. Finally, after some arguing, fire crews were able to make contact with an individual who identified himself as the property owner. Fire crews noted that several of the vehicles located on scene had fire tags, indicating there were firefighters somewhere, located on the back of them, and individuals were wearing fire bunker gear pants. It is also noted that fire crews responded to the same location on April 15th of 2022 for a similar situation where a 911 call was received from, and that's blacked out, and requested assistance extinguishing an out-of-control fire. The caller was identified as, blacked out again, 3 trucks responded that day and extinguished the fire. On this day, fire responders noted that the individuals performing the controlled burn did not have necessary tools for controlling the fire. Wet mop, no water on scene. Greenwood County Sheriff's Office has no record of anyone at this address calling in a controlled burn on either day listed above. Furthermore, fire crews had to respond to this location again on April 19th, 2022 to put out a rekindled fire where the fire crews noted it appeared the fire had started after crews left on April 18th. It is noted that the Piedmont Fire had to cut a chain that was locking the gate to extinguish the rekindled fire. On April 19th, the sheriff, he notes that he completed the citation 01426 for violation of Greenwood County Resolution 14-03. I certified a mailed copy for the citation to the individual that's blacked out. I used the date April 15th of 2022 at the top of the citation due to the two separate incidents taking place on April 15th, 2022 and April 18th of 2022. Resolution 14-03 is located on Greenwood County website and has for as long as I can remember. I also noted that on April 16th of 2018, an individual called in a controlled burn to the Greenwood County Sheriff's Office indicating he knew the proper basic protocol but refused to follow it. So I just really kind of wanted to bring this to your attention that what was going on. I think an investigation would be needed. I also included the court documents where it actually has Christopher D. Dugan's name on it, that he was given in violation of fire prevention codes. So if you guys got any questions, I got all my documentation that has all the fire codes and stuff if you need it for Greenwood County.
So Christopher Dugan is who now? I'm sorry?
Fire marshal.
Fire marshal. And so you're saying that he owns this land?
Yeah.
Okay. That is very interesting.
Okay.
Like, I could give you this, it has all the information, all the court documents, all the, yeah, you need that. If anyone else wants a copy
Great, thank you so much.
of everything I'm giving her.
What's your name, sir?
Scott Reedy,
What's your role?
citizen.
Greenwood County?
I'm good, thank you.
No,
Scott?
no,
Here, which
our
one?
property here in the district.
Thank you very much.
I just think it's important that fire marshal actions are noted. Greenwood County had a hard time with it.
Thank you very much, appreciate it. Okay. Moving on to new business for the zoning case.
Hi, I am Erin Buckford with the planning department. I am excited to be back. This is my first DAB meeting outside of the last one. Oh, sorry, can you not hear me? Outside of the other one that I came to introduce myself last time. So I'll go through this. Philip is also here to answer any questions that I may not be able to speak to. Since there is not a quorum, we'll go through this discussion, but then you will not ultimately provide a recommendation on a case. So we'll make note of the feedback, but there will not be a formal recommendation. So zoning case 2022-35 is a request to rezone a property currently zoned B multifamily residential to LC limited commercial. The property is generally located on the west side of Northwest Street and within 1/4 mile of West Sioux Boulevard. The site is currently developed with a 2-family residence built in 1953. The residence is being utilized as an office at this time, and the owner of this property has expressed that he intends to sell the property and wants to bring this office use into compliance. So a use as a general office is an illegal use in the B district. So the goal is to bring this into compliance before the sale. Anna, would you mind going to the zoning map? I have to get to. There you go. So you can see that the subject site is the B zone business there in blue, and development along the Northwest Street corridor is generally in a strip corridor pattern. So there's commercial uses and zoning along the arterial, and then the residential neighborhoods that abut it to the east and west. The properties abutting the subject site to the north, you'll see, is zoned general office. That is developed with a single-family residence. To the south is zoned limited commercial. It's also developed with a single-family residence. And then property is directly abutting to the west are zoned general office and are developed with each developed with a single-family residence. The properties there in white, farther to the west and then to the northwest are zoned SF5 and are developed generally with single-family residences built around the 1960s, so in a similar style to the subject property. So we might go to the site photos, if you don't mind, if you keep scrolling down. Okay, so this is facing toward the subject site. You can see there's the small sign up front for the office. And then if you wouldn't mind scrolling down on kind of see it there. So that is Northwest Street. Property does front Northwest Street. They do have some equipment currently located in this side rear yard there for the use of the construction office. And that is the property, single-family residence that's zoned general office that is directly to the west of the subject site. Across West Street is a property zoned limited commercial and it is currently developed with an auto shop. So there's the three residential uses on the northwest and south side, and then the limited commercial abutting use that's across West Street right there. And then those photos, so if you look farther northwest of the site, there is some property that's zoned for multifamily use, and those are the garden homes right there. So in review of this request, staff has ultimately recommended denial of the limited commercial zoning and recommendation of general office zoning. And that is largely due to the comprehensive development plans guidelines for development in context with the neighborhood. So ensuring that land use changes fit with the current context of the surrounding development, and also with the guidelines to ensure that there is buffering. So should this property be rezoned limited commercial, the full scope of limited commercial uses would be permitted by right on the property. A change to general office and would only allow those permitted in the general office district, which are lesser intensity than limited commercial. And the existing general office zoning surrounding the site would buffer the single-family SF5 district from the general office zoning. The same effect would be in place if the property were zoned limited commercial. However, because the surrounding properties that are zoned commercial and general office are single-family residences, the geo zoning was deemed more appropriate based on the context of the development in that area. I can answer any questions you have.
Two comments. First, I think you guys' recommendation is right on track, going with the GO option. Second, I can't believe the neighbors have put up with that shipping container being out there for so long.
I did receive comment from the next door neighbor, one that is directly abutting the shipping container on that side. You can see the pool, I think, in the backyard there. They were requesting denial or not support of the LC zone change. But that was the only neighbor that I had heard from at this time.
So you mentioned that they want to sell the property, that's why they want to bring it into compliance. Is there another maybe incentive out there for somebody to bring a property like this into compliance? Is there a penalty for them using it outside of what's allowed?
I mean, they would be told that they were an illegal use. I don't know. Philip would probably speak better to what the enforcement process looks like.
The enforcement process, they of course have to go through the scenarios of like giving them notice and however long that takes, and then following up to see if they've done something. So enforcement can take some time. They can get authorities involved in terms of like stepping in and potentially trying to shut down the business and things like that. So likely it just hasn't been enforced, where it's complaint based. You're more likely to get complaints from the shipping container up front than the office use. That's partly why we were recommending GO, is GO is a type of use that's pretty innocuous next to residential, because of the same thing is, people show up to work 8 to 5 and then they leave, and you don't really have a lot of traffic outside of business hours. So
I think that the GO, the GO doing it right on track, I think I'm kind of curious how that works.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you. Water.
So I'm Bill Perkins with Public Works and Utilities. The Northwest Water Facility, most people have seen some level of the construction out there. The tower cranes have come down now, but most people recognized it by the tower cranes until now. Across from the zoo, they're along Zoo Boulevard between I-235 and 21st Street. So one we talked about this evening, you want next, go one more? Yeah, right there. So the plant site has a lot of work going on, but there's also some off-site work, mostly pipeline related work. And we've got several areas, and I'll try to go through them pretty briefly, but we're going to kind of drill down a little bit as we go. But the specific areas, so A is down around Botanica and around the existing plant. So we have a pipeline to rehab, and we need to extend a pipeline in there. B kind of covers a big area, but you see it's just a whole series of little dots. There's some air releases that we're going to have to change, and I'll go through some more. Like I said, we'll drill down a little bit and get into some more detail. C, again, is another pipeline extension, and that work on C actually is beginning this week. I mean, that one, we were going to come last month, but we didn't quite make the agenda for you for last month. So that's the reason we're here this month. But C actually is starting here like real soon. And I'll talk a little bit, there's some road closures involved there and some other work. D is extension of a pipeline up to our residual treatment area. And I'll talk about it a little bit. E, where you see E, we're working with Evergy. Evergy's building a substation to provide power to the plant. And I'll talk a little bit about it. So if you want to go to the next slide. So again, with that idea of drilling down, so this is the area you see the existing water treatment plant there in the middle. Art Museum's clear over to the right, Botanica's to the left. There's an existing pipeline across the Botanica parking lot, generally where we see that A6, A7, A8. We're going to rehabilitate that existing pipeline. So we're not going to dig up the whole thing, but we do have to dig up where there's fittings and valves. So where there's straight pipe, we're going to line that pipe, but we do have to dig up in several points down through there. Where you see A5, we're actually going to add a driveway into Botanica, because when we do the work at A6, we're going to close that existing drive for a period of time. So we're going to add a driveway for them over there at A5. And those are all going to affect some trees in that area, is probably the main point of that work. And I'll get into a lot more detail about those trees and those areas. Where you see the A1, A2, A3, A4, that's an extension of the 66-inch pipeline. So we've got a large pipeline, basically going to go in that south half of Murdoch, and then go down on the existing water treatment plant property, come out in the south half of Pine, and then end up down there in Museum Boulevard, where we had the work here, not too recent, but recently we had work there that happened. Now's when we kind of expected that work to happen, but we had that problem earlier on. That's where the hackberry and some other trees ended up getting removed in that area a lot sooner than we thought were going to happen. If you want to go on, I'm going to kind of go through each one of those. So this is where A1's at. Basically, this is looking down that south half of Murdoch towards the golf course, towards Simpark Golf Course. There's one Bradford there on the south half of in the south right of way. It's going to be coming out. And that's kind of what I'm going to, what we do through here is we went through with our city arborist, and we've identified each tree that's going to come out with this work. So if you want to go on to the next one. So this is where we're turning south, and basically this picture standing in Murdoch looking south along the existing water treatment plant. And again, there's a Bradford and a couple of oak trees there. They're going to have to come out for that pipeline to turn and go south. On to the next one. So then we go on south along the existing water treatment plant, and I talked about how we're going to turn, and we're going to go in the south half of Pine. So this is looking back towards the Wichita Art Museum from the existing water treatment plant. There's a large elm tree there in the south half. No intention of taking that tree out. That tree's going to stay, but you see how the limbs are sticking out over the center line. We're going to have to trim some limbs. We're at least going to have to trim some limbs there to be able to get equipment. Again, 66-inch pipeline, it's going to be some large equipment working in this area. So then we turn south, and this is where we're going basically between the water treatment plant and the Wichita Art Museum's parking lot, basically right at the west end of the Art Museum parking lot. And we've got a couple of oak trees here. And on the next slide, there's two more sweet gums. So there's two more sweet gums there. And then from there, we get down to where we've already removed all those trees there at Museum Boulevard. So then jumping back up to Murdoch, this is where I was talking about we're going to add a driveway for the art museum. The purple circles, those are all trees that are end up going to come out for this driveway to go in. Did make a note there, myrrh tree. If you're aware of the myrrh tree, we're not touching it. It's going to get fenced off and we're not touching the myrrh tree. So make sure we point that out. But you see over on the they're kind of towards the northeast corner of their existing parking lot. And we've got some individuals. Woo!
Sorry about that.
No, you're right. We got some, I think you go up a little further. One more. So these are the trees that were in those purple circles that are going to come out. I don't know why that one's all got lines through it, but these are the trees that are going to end up coming out for that work to get that driveway in. Again, from the Murdoch side, there's an oak and two sugar maple, and then inside their fence, there's this Chinese wing nut that we tried to work around, but we're not able to get it worked around it. And then some juniper trees there that are going to come out. Go on to the next, yeah. So this is the work where you saw A6, and that we'll end up closing their driveway. Again, we got some purple circles there where we're going to show you some trees that are going to come out. This is where we're making a connection to existing, so you see where there's some T's and some 90s. That's the reason we have to dig this area up. There's some valves in there as well. Next one. So these are the trees that are coming out in that area. This Catalpa tree, kind of hard to see in that picture, but right on the north side of that Catalpa tree, there's a large vault, and that's one of the valves that we've got to be able to connect to. We got this purple princess tree that's a little bit to the east of that, and then the sugar maple that's over in the island to the south. So going on south in that Botanica parking lot, we've got some islands there. We've got two islands that we're pretty sure we're going to have to take out. There's a bend in the pipe, and again, we've got to be able to dig up any place where there's a bend or a fitting. We can't do this lining except for through straight pipe. So those two islands are going to come out, and I'll show you some pictures of those trees. There's one more island down there that we may have to disturb, just trying to be as upfront as possible, but we don't think we're going to. Don't think we're going to disturb that, but we wanted to point it out just in case we'd end up having to dig that far south. We'll go southbound down. So on the right are the two islands that we're gonna end up having to take out. And one thing I didn't mention, we're working with Botanica, like these smaller trees, they're gonna save those and be able to relocate them or maybe put them back in the same spot. Larger trees, we're not able to do anything with. We've been working everything we can with Botanica, but the really larger ones, they're really not able to do anything with. And the other thing I didn't mention too, this work at Botanica will be happening this winter. Basically, we're getting the work in the Botanica parking lot squeezed in between the end of Illuminations and the beginning of their Tulip Festival. So we're kind of squeezing that work in. So a little further south, there's one more island that we're going to be digging up because you see there's a T and there's also a valve there. So we'll go on to the next one. But in this island, we don't think we're going to affect any trees. You see the big gray square there by the white car? That's that valve, and so that T is just to the left of that valve. We don't think we're going to disturb this big tree to the right. It should be fine, but that small island with the bushes there by the white car, that's going to get torn up. So that's the areas down there around Botanica and getting around to Hess, getting around the existing plant. So B was the area I was talking about, air releases. So what happens at each of these, what's happening in general here is there's an existing pipeline. That light blue is an existing pipeline. We are converting that pipeline. Today it carries raw water. When the project's complete, this will carry finished water. So it's a whole different animal as far as regulations. So as raw water, these air releases, we have to have air releases, basically high points in the pipe. High points and low points in the pipe are an issue for us. We've got to be able to release air, we've got to be able to release vacuums. As a raw water pipeline, those air releases are all below ground. So what you'll see in these pictures of these sites, it just looks like a manhole today, okay? But as a finished water pipeline, that has to vent above grade by regulation. We can't have it vent below grade.
So you don't risk contamination of finished water?
Exactly. So if we draw a vacuum, we were pulling in, we can't draw in any contaminated water. So what we're going to be doing is adding these big upside down J's sticking up out of the ground. They're going to be pretty significant. We're talking 12 to 20 inch pipe. So they're going to be pretty significant. They'll stand up a few feet tall. They're not a small thing, but it'll be some cast iron pipe sticking up, look like an upside down J. That's kind of what that sketch is. So if you want to go on. So we kind of go through each of these one at a time. B1's there by the river, just south of the 13th Street Bridge, there where Amadon comes up and dead ends of the Sand Road. You can see in this picture, right here. This is what they look like today, just a manhole. But we're gonna have one of those big pipes sticking up out of the ground when we get that.
Can't wait, Bill, can't wait.
Huh?
Can't wait for those.
Yeah. Well, yeah, we didn't really want to do it either, but.
I like clean drinking water.
Yes. I'm sorry?
Like a community painting theme for each J.
I got one here in a minute. I'll show you that actually makes it a little more interesting. So if you want to go on to the next one. Again, same general idea. This is over at the 13th and McLean intersection. There on the southeast corner, we've got another one of those air releases. If you want to go on to the next one. So then we start going north up through that neighborhood, and we start getting out in front of houses and off to the sides of houses. And most of them are out right along the curb. You see that manhole there in that picture? Again, they'll have one of those big J's sticking up out of it. And we're going out to the neighborhood groups first. We've been trying to get out to all the DABs, and we're going to some neighborhood groups, and we will be contacting each of these property owners individually as well. Yeah, if you want to go to the next one. And then as we get up into 17th Street and we start going down through there, again, out there on the corner off to the side of the house. And if you want to go on to the next one. Same idea again. This one's not quite as visible, but it's off to the left of that catch basin. And this one's kind of more in front of the house, but it's going to be the same situation as far as what we end up with. Go on to the next one. Here's one I think is going to be interesting. This guy's got, it's really cool. I mean, what all he's done. we're kind of waiting to see what he decorates this vent pipe as. He's got some interesting decorations out there. Same idea again. We got that manhole out there along the curb. And then we've got two that are out there on each side of the big ditch. There's really nothing out there other than just grass, but we'll be doing the exact same thing out there. So now area C, we've got a pipeline extension we're doing. Basically, where Zoo Boulevard curves into 21st Street, there's like a big triangle island shape out there. We're going to be excavating out there, extending a pipeline in 21st Street over and then down into the plant site. There will be some road closures involved with this. And again, this is work that's starting immediately, starting this week. Hang on for just a second on that slide. So the road closures, where you see C1, basically from Hoover, not the intersection, but from the intersection over to the railroad tracks, we're going to have closed for several weeks. It'll be closed for several weeks. We're working with the two businesses there. There's a vet on the north side and another business on the south side. They both have driveways out onto Hoover, so we're able to keep them in access. But we will have that piece of 21st Street completely closed. As we get over to that intersection at Hoover, we will have the whole intersection of 21st and Hoover closed. So from all four directions, and that'll be about 2 weeks. By the time they get, again, 66-inch pipeline, and as we got closer, we've learned AT&T has a whole bunch of fiber optic cables, and they didn't put them all in the same ditch. They're all spread out. So that's what ended up being 2 weeks, is trying to work with AT&T on that.
What are you going to do for an alternative routing for traffic?
So we're going to put out detour signs. We've got a traffic control plan that we're running through Gary's office. And basically it'll be detour signs taking you over to Ridge and then back around. It's not a good detour. It's a long detour, but.
And how long do you expect those to be closed again?
2 weeks. The intersection will be for about 2 weeks.
Weather permit.
Well, I mean, weather's always subject. Yeah, we're always subject to weather. On the other side of the intersection where you see the C2, we're going to have the south half, after we get done with the intersection, then we're going to have the south half of 21st Street closed for about 3 more weeks. We're going to keep westbound traffic operating there. It'll just be the eastbound traffic. So for the people in Emerald Bay, they'll be able to get out this way, but going into their neighborhood, they're going to have to go in an alternate
What's your projected dates for these?
It'll be over the next 3 months. It'll be spread out over the next 3 months. So I don't know exactly when we're going to get to where we have a closure on that first part, but it'll be about 3 weeks, and it'll be coming up here really soon. And then the intersection will be about 2 weeks, and then the portion east of the intersection will be about 3 weeks. We have been making contact with all the HOAs in the area and all the businesses as well. We've had meetings with most all of the businesses in the area, and again with the HOAs, and I think we have one other neighborhood meeting that we still are planning to have too. Okay, so now if you want to go on to the next one.
So that's 8 weeks, you think, total?
Be about 8 weeks. The reason I'm kind of hesitant on when it's actually starting though is because we're actually going to start some of that excavation before we actually have to close the road. So it kind of depends when we start those closures, kind of depends on how long that excavation takes. So where you saw the C1 there along the south side, again, we've got several trees that we're going to take out there on that south half of the street. Can you go on to the next one? And then after you cross Hoover Road, again on the south side of the road, there's some Austrian pines there that are going to have to come out as well. So then another area is over in front of the zoo. We've got 2 pipelines. It's kind of where you see the green ovals. We've got 2 pipelines that are going to be coming across Zoo Boulevard. We're not going to close Zoo Boulevard. There may be a single lane closure on Zoo Boulevard at different times, but we won't be closing it. We're going to bore under the road, under the railroad tracks and under the road. But we may have to do a lane closure because one of our pipelines is actually pretty close to the road. So for safety purposes, we may have to close one lane. But in the orange area there's an existing bike path, very popular bike path. Our contractor is actually laying a temporary bike path, and they put out signs last week identifying that we are going to be putting in a temporary bike path to keep that open. So, okay, if you want the next one. So D's where I was talking about, we have a pipeline that's going to go up along 21st and West Street up to our existing lime lagoons. We won't have any road closures with this. What they're going to do is they're going to use using flagman. It's going to be put in basically right at the edge of paving all along that road, and they're going to use flagman during the day, so it'll be open in the evening. So, but during the day, they'll have the flagman closing off one direction or the other.
Is that going on at the same time as your Hoover and 21st?
It'll be after it. It'll be after. Okay, on the next one. So
Jerry,
we're-
you look like a hero with traffic closures.
Yeah, I guess.
So with the, at D1, where D1 was shown there, there's no real large trees or anything, but there's quite a bit of small volunteer trees, a lot of junipers, and there's a bunch of sumac in that area too. But okay, we go on to the next one. And then E is that Evergy substation I was talking about. And if you've been down there, you've seen the work's already started there. We've got a picture, but the picture's already way out of date. So they're started gung-ho on that substation. There was some trees in that area. If you want to go on to the next slide. There was some trees in that lot that did have to come out. They're getting all their gravel and everything down, getting ready to put in their substation. One other thing to note on this is from this substation over to the plant site, they'll be putting in electrical 12 kV facility. It's all going to be underground. So there'll be some pedestals along the way, but it'll be underground. We're not adding any poles, no aerial wires. At the substation, where the substation site is, if you're familiar with it, there on the west side of the big slough, Evergy has a large 138 kV facility. There in this substation, there will be some large poles to get that 138 kV down to bus bars so that they can make that transition down to 12 kV that we need. And these last few slides, they show a landscaping plan. I can guarantee this will not be the final landscaping plan. This landscaping plan was done to meet MAPC requirements for our zoning, but it will not be our final. If you're not aware, we also have a public art project related to the Northwest Water Facility. And I'm sure it's going to change how this landscape plan looks. There's also a bike path planned along Hoover. I'm sure it's going to change how this landscape plan looks. And the other thing that's going to change this landscape plan that we want to make sure we mention to you guys, as well as all the other groups we talked to, is all these trees were taken out. We do have a budget to plant trees. We have a landscaping budget, is what we actually have. But to plant trees, we do not have a set plan yet. Our intent, staff's intent right now is to work with, we have a project steering committee, which has a couple of city council members on it, as well as other city council members, and basically get direction. Where do you want to plant trees? We're wide open on how we do this landscaping plan as far as what we plant trees. We'll have some requirements, again, due to zoning out here on the site, but as far as the rest of that money and where we plant trees and what kinds of trees we plant, we could work with the park department, we could work with a landscape architect. We're willing to take any feedback that anybody in the public has, and that way we can give that feedback to the steering committee and the city council members and get direction on what to do with that landscaping plan and those trees that we do plant. But there is money set aside in the project, within the project budget, for planting trees. It's just we don't have a set plan yet. That planting, we don't plan on being until like the latter part of 2024. We're trying to make sure we get everything in and everything's working before we go planting trees on top of what we just put in. So we bear with us just a little bit on when those trees do get planted. But that's basically these last few slides, and that's all that I've got. Yeah.
So a couple things.
Yeah.
My assumption is that since you've been working with botanical gardens, there really has been an accurate assessment, not only of the trees within the botanic area, but also all the others on whether they're spadable or not.
So the ones that are off-site, we've been working with the city arborist, Gary I always forget his last name.
Ferris.
Ferris, thank you. We've been working with him on the offsite stuff, but yeah, on the Botanica site, we've been working with their staff.
Okay. I am all for the water department project. It's critical, especially for the long-term viability of the community. I am disappointed in loss of what I call slow growth, long-living trees. And my input, for what it's worth, is that we not get carried away planting a bunch of ornamentals and foo-foo trees that are short-lived and don't provide much value in the long term. And instead get a balance in there, probably more heavily weighted to things like bur oaks, white oaks, red oaks, those kinds of trees. Bradford pears are pretty, but the first good windstorm, they're gone. And sweet gums are not very drought tolerant for this area. So I'm hoping that we'll make wise decisions when it comes to that replant.
Sounds good, I appreciate that.
I have several questions for you.
Mhm.
Do you know, what's the total number of trees being removed? Do you know?
No, I don't.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I can't give you an exact
Too many.
number. And the reason I'm kind of hesitant to give any exact numbers is because, where do you stop on size? Because, we've got a whole bunch that are just like little 2-inch trees that I don't
There's
know
like 30
whether we
or
count or
40
not.
that you guys like set, like by Botanica, there's probably what, I think.
Yeah, so there's 34 that we've actually got specifically
Yeah,
identified.
there
There's
could be some
34.
volunteer
And
trees that aren't on.
is it possible to see that map of the driveway at the art museum again? I had some questions on that, but I wanted to see it before because I didn't have them all written down before I.
So, but I think you just went past the one, I think it's that one.
So the trees that are being removed at Botanica, are they being removed for the driveway or are they being removed for the pipeline?
So there are some trees that are being removed for the driveway, but there's both, yes.
Okay, so what, I guess, is there a need for another driveway, another entrance into?
So it's to keep access to that parking lot for Botanica while we have their one driveway closed. They only have one driveway in there right now.
And there's no other way that you can work it without tearing down mature trees?
We can't, no, there's trees, spaced all the way through there.
Because
We end up losing something somewhere.
But does it have to be the mature trees and kind of the 20-year-old ones, or can it be more ornamental trees further down? I guess I'm not understanding.
So we found the place where we took as few trees out as we could. We absolutely did not want to affect the murra tree. We're making sure we stay away from the murra tree. When we get further to the west of the murra tree, we've got several other large trees, and I can't tell you exact species, I'm sorry, but that they didn't want to touch. So that's the reason we ended up back over against a hyper facility that we have. And going through there, that's where we got just the junipers, the 3 trees on the outside of the fence, and then that Chinese wing
So
bed.
their current driveway will not be, there's no way to work around utilizing the current driveway. Basically what you're saying is there's no other option besides
Yeah,
tearing it out.
we have fittings under it. We've got to be able to get to rehab this pipeline. We've got to be able to dig up that
It just seems to me
area.
there's like a lot of mature trees being taken out, and Wichita notoriously is bad about tearing out trees and not necessarily replacing them with the best of trees later on. So I think that's what my concern is. So is there, when you said that there's a budget to put in new trees, is it every tree that's gonna be taken out and replaced with a new tree?
It can be whatever. It could be like trees we could come up with. It could be totally different trees. Again, like we've got a whole bunch of Bradfords. I shouldn't say a whole bunch. There's several Bradfords in here. Our arborist is saying the same thing that Mr. Washburn's saying, is those, we don't want to plant those back. We want something different. So we're fine with that. If I know there's a Chinese wingnut, if we want to plant that Chinese wingnut back, we can plant a Chinese wingnut back. We can do pretty much anything there.
Yeah, it's just, you have to wait 20 years for it to get to where it's at now, and that's kind of where.
That's the hard part. I understand.
Other
You'll
question,
see them, I may not.
maybe, if it's not torn out again before it gets mature. The other question is the J pipes. Is there any type of way to work around like landscaping around those, so they're not just big ugly pipes in people's yards, or
We have property owners do that all the time. We really don't have anything set up to do that, but it could be part of that landscape plan.
like even on like I'm talking like more like the public property, because obviously a personal property, they're gonna do whatever, but like where it's at, on like the main streets? I mean, is there a way that we could work that in?
It'd be out of that landscape plan money, yeah, I mean,
Okay.
I'm sure we can.
I think that's all the questions I have.
Okay.
I have one little question. On those J-pipes that are gonna be on private property, is there a process those people have to, like, if they wanted to put in their own screening around it, is there a process they have to follow? Do they have to have that approved by the city since they're planning right up next to your pipe, or?
So, a couple of things there, just, and this is probably being too picky, it's not actually on private property, it's in the road right away.
Yeah.
But, and the reason I mention that is because planting in road right away, people do it all day, every day. And I'm sure Gary would tell you that there's a permit process to do that. But people do it every day, and I wouldn't be shocked, and
So
it wouldn't change anything if they did.
is it part of the plan to reach out to those property owners and kind of let them know?
Yes.
This is what you can do, this is what you can't do, we've seen it
Yes.
before, we wanna make this as easy as possible?
Yes,
Okay.
yes. We've got similar things around town with fire hydrants. People paint fire hydrants, paint manholes all the time. It's not a big deal. The one thing we do always tell everybody though, if we come in and do maintenance, if you've done something that affects the functionality, we're gonna put it back to what it was to make it functional again, okay? But I don't know how many manholes I've seen that are painted into a golf ball. No big deal. That's great. It looks cool. But yeah, as long as you don't affect the functionality, it's not a problem.
And paint fire hydrants is another thing, though, because those are color coded for their capacity.
Yeah, painting fire hydrants, we usually don't do anything about it until we come around, but if we're doing maintenance, it's gonna get painted back to silver and red.
All right, any more questions? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Good job.
Okay, just a couple updates. I'd like to thank everybody for coming out to the District 6 coffee and helping with Convoy of Hope. That was super fun. And Anna, do you know how many people came through or anything?
So, about 1,000 residents were served and 700 kids received backpacks that day.
Perfect. Thank you very much. This Thursday, there's a Spanish fentanyl forum at 6 o'clock here at Evergreen. And like I mentioned before, the 9th is Neighborhood Night Out. And also something I wanted to mention to you guys is there's a planning case that will be coming before the council meeting tomorrow, and it's one that we've already heard. It's the one in Delano on McLean between Vine and Fern, and I believe I'm actually going to defer it a little bit further to bring it back to come before the DAB. So there's just been a lot of protests, last week I was at a meeting where there was 54 neighbors. There's just a lot still going on, and I don't quite feel comfortable. They've also brought forth some more information that I think would be beneficial for all of you to listen to. So just maybe kind of be on the lookout for that, and we'll send over any information that we learn prior to.
Is that the brewery?
No.
Okay.
Mm-mm. It's the 19 townhomes.
Ah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, yes, you guys want to watch out for that. The next DAB meeting will be on September 12th at 6:30. Anybody else? Anything?
We decided that August was just too hot to have neighborhood gathering, so we're gonna have ours September the 10th from about 4 to 5:30. And cafeterias is gonna open up their little play area and splash pad,
At what time?
4 to 5:30.
Okay,
Hour
cool.
and a half.
Awesome. All right, well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right.